Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something that touches literally every part of human interaction, a topic that's been debated in living rooms, boardrooms, and psychology labs for decades. You know the stereotype, right? The idea that guys are just inherently hot-headed and prone to sudden action, while women are naturally blessed with this seemingly endless well of patience. But how much of that is actual science, and how much is just a cultural myth we've all kind of bought into? Well, we're going to bypass all the cultural noise today and break down the exact source material to give you a purely scientific, biological, and social analysis. By the end of this, you're going to see that what we usually just write off as simple gender differences is actually a fascinating, complex interplay of human hardware and social software.
So here is our game plan for today. 1. The truth of impulsivity and patience. 2. The underlying biological logic. 3. Evolutionary survival strategies. 4. Acquired social shaping. And 5. Complementary character advantages. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Truth of impulsivity and patience. Let's separate the myth from the reality. Before we can explain the why, we need to be incredibly clear about the what. We're looking to bust a myth here and replace it with nuanced reality. So, are men really more impulsive than women? It's a direct question, and looking at the numerous psychological and behavioral studies we're unpacking today, you absolutely can observe this phenomenon. However, the source material makes a really vital distinction. This is not an absolute rule. I mean, you definitely know plenty of guys who are totally calm and grounded, just like you probably know women who are super impulsive. So how do we actually square the science with our daily reality? The crucial concept to wrap your head around here is the statistical average. When researchers say men are more impulsive, they just mean that on a mathematical mean across a massive population, men tend toward high risk, instant rewards, and over-impulsivity. On that exact same massive scale, women average out with higher tendency toward delayed gratification, emotional regulation, and relationship-oriented behavior. We are looking at a macro-level group tendency here, not a fixed guarantee for the individual sitting right next to you. Moving on to Section 2, the underlying biological logic. Let's look at the human hardware. Let's see how our physiology sets the baseline for these behaviors. Think of this first part as the brain's accelerator. The source points out that men, on average, have significantly higher levels of testosterone. But we need to update our understanding here. Testosterone does not simply mean someone is bad-tempered. Instead, it kind of functions as an accelerator that promotes an act first, think later mentality. It elevates your risk preference, fuels a drive for faster action, cranks up competitiveness, and makes the brain hypersensitive to instant rewards. That's exactly why, statistically speaking across cultures, men are more likely to speed while driving, engage in gambling, or jump into high-risk investments. But hey, every accelerator needs a braking system, right? Enter the prefrontal cortex. This is the area of your brain responsible for delaying gratification, long-term planning, and emotional control. And the source highlights a really fascinating developmental timeline. In females, this region matures earlier on average, which brings about earlier stability, self-control, and social skills. In males, it matures slightly later. This delayed maturation of the brain's brakes perfectly explains why teenage boys, especially during puberty, are statistically so much more reckless and prone to thrill-seeking compared to girls their exact same age. But the hardware differences don't stop there. Take a look at the dopamine reward system. Our sources show that the male brain's reward system has stronger average reactions to specific triggers, things like novelty, competition, winning, and achievement feedback. This massive dopamine hit in high-stimulus environments makes waiting around feel literally unbearable. It also statistically predisposes males to specific types of behavioral loops, like chasing the thrill of a video game, the rush of gambling, or the crazy adrenaline of extreme sports. Which brings us to Section 3, evolutionary survival strategies. A naturally curious mind has to ask, why on earth did our brains develop this specific hardware in the first place? Well, evolutionary psychology suggests it all stems from the wildly distinct survival tasks our ancestors dealt with for thousands of years. The historical pressures on ancient males were all about hunting, competing for status, making split-second decisions, and going after risky resources. That favored high action and high aggression. On the flip side, the historical pressures on females were vastly different. They centered on child-rearing, maintaining cohesive group relations, and ensuring long-term stability. Raising an infant requires just an immense amount of patience, which effectively selected for traits like emotional recognition and risk aversion. I want you to really picture this ancient, primitive environment for a second. As our source material points out, in a harsh world like that, Hesitating too long could literally mean losing a vital resource, missing a meal, or missing an opportunity to pass on your genes. Quick, impulsive actions were incredibly successful survival tools for ancient men. But we really must remember, these remain broad group evolutionary tendencies. They are echoes of our ancient past. They are absolutely not rigid destinies for any of us today.
Section 4, Acquired Social Shaping. This is where we install the software.
So we have the biological hardware, but society installs the software. Think about the rapid-fire phrases little boys hear basically from the moment they can walk. Be bold, don't dawdle, take charge. And the big one, don't cry like a girl. Our upbringing and social culture play a massive role here. Society actively encourages and rewards male risk-taking, but at the exact same time, it actively suppresses their emotional vulnerability. Boys are frequently taught that expressing delicate emotions is just flat out unacceptable. Now contrast that immediately with what girls hear growing up. Wait your turn. Consider others' feelings. Control your temper. Female conditioning heavily prioritizes patience, emotional regulation, and keeping relationships smooth. Girls are socially trained to observe the room, to accommodate, and to wait. And here is the profound social result of all that conditioning. Many behaviors that we casually label as male impulsivity are actually reinforced by a society that leaves men completely unequipped to process complex emotions in any other way. When guys feel stress or heavy emotions, they often use impulsive action to release the pressure, simply because they weren't taught how to emotionally process it. Meanwhile, women have been meticulously trained to observe the atmosphere, delay their gratification, and think before they act. The software we install heavily supercharges the biological hardware we started with.
Section 5. Complementary character advantages. Let's pull this all together.
Prepare for an incredible twist provided by modern science, neuroplasticity. Our brains are not permanently hardwired. They are highly adaptable and continually reshaped by our environments. As education, economic independence, and social roles change, the source material notes that these behavioral gaps between genders are actively shrinking. When women enter high-competition industries, they become highly decisive and action-oriented. Conversely, when men take on stable, long-term parenting roles, their patience drastically increases. In fact, research shows that a father's brain literally undergoes structural changes after long-term infant care. Your environment shapes your brain just as much as your brain shapes your behavior. Ultimately, the core takeaway from the source material is that impulsivity and patience are not gendered flaws. They are equal, highly complementary advantages. Action and impulsivity fuel entrepreneurship, exploration, and innovation. We literally need that to drive breakthroughs. But we equally need stability and patience for long-term planning, collaboration, and emotional stability. One trait creates the spark of progress, while the other maintains the sustainable growth of our society. They are basically two halves of a highly effective human whole. We've explored the biology, the evolutionary history, and the social conditioning today. But as we just learned, your brain is fundamentally adaptable. So I want to leave you with this final thought for today's explainer. Knowing that your mental software can actually be rewritten, how has your own specific environment shaped your personal balance of risk-taking and patience? And more importantly, how might you actively reshape it going forward? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it gave you a really clear, structured understanding of the fascinating science behind how we tick. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.